I wasn't planning on doing a video today. I thought I'd take the day off, but I don't know. It's a beautiful day. Again, I'm out at the lake. Really cold though, minus 15, so wouldn't want to be walking out there. But what I want to talk today about is, well, a little bit more about my dad. My father will always be my hero. I was always like the kid that was like, my dad's better than your dad. Because he kind of was. But like I said, he always talked to me like a man. He always treated me with respect. And he was a man of action. When he died, all of his cop buddies and peers and whatever, they all said the exact same thing to me, which made me feel like it was, coming from the heart, like it was, it was real. And they all said something to the effect like, your dad was the best, and I'm not just blowing smoke up your ass. The old trout was the man. And when shit hit the fan, everybody wanted Dirty Terry by their side. He tossed my buddy Scotty Karate around one night like a rag doll, which was actually pretty funny. Like, Scotty's another guy. Scotty and Harv. Harvey knows Harvey shouldn't drink whiskey. And I think Scotty knows Scotty shouldn't drink whiskey either at this point. But needless to say, it went to court and it was pretty funny. Like my dad actually, my dad had a great sense of humor. And he also took meticulous notes. When he passed, we had to give the OPP all his journals, and I wish we didn't, because I would have loved to have made a book from them. They really could have literally just been photographed and made into a book. Now that I think about it, oh my God, why did I do that? Anyway, so, but for a while, my dad taught a VIP. My dad actually, in another life, he probably was a history teacher, so he would have been like Mr. Jensen. Mr. and Mrs. Jensen, who were my sort of parents away from home growing up. And they were both teachers, a history, geography teacher, and she taught English. And unfortunately, I never had her in grade 7, because she taught at St. John Fisher, where I went to school with Paul and Eric. And a bunch of other, people that I'm still in touch with. But Catholic school. But my father taught the VIP program for a little bit, which is the cop that goes around to schools and, talks to them about don't do drugs and all that kind of stuff. He had this cabinet full of different sorts of drugs, like PCP, angel dust. That shit does to kids. So anyway, when I was, I think I was 18 years old. Like, I was in between jobs at the time and home, which was kind of the thing. When I wasn't working, I'd go home for a bit, right? Live at home and eat well. And Dad was like, hey, I want you to come to one of my VIP classes with me. I've talked to the principal and the teacher, and I have an idea about first impressions that I want to do with the kids. And I think this was, maybe grade 6 or something. And so, so at that point though, I was, I was full on rock and roll mode, right? Like, well, my hair was, considerably more glorious back then. And I was in better shape, obviously younger. And anyway, so he said, what I want you to do is I want you to just come up and knock on the classroom door, and the teacher will open the door, and I want you to ask me to come talk to you. Like, we'll go off to the staff room and just hang out for a little bit. Let the teacher talk about what the students think is happening here. Right? So, so that's what we did. So he said, like, give me about, 5-10 minutes just to sort of get in there, and then just bang on the door sort of randomly, right? Between that window. And so I go in there, and I was like, Constable Devine, I'd like to talk to you for a moment if I could. And he's like, oh, okay. Right? And then we go off, and the teacher's like, wow, what do you think that's all about? Right? And so all the little grade 6 kids were like, oh, he looks like a criminal. He's probably doing drugs. Because the first thing you want to do when you do drugs is go into a school where you know there's a cop and say, yeah, I'm high as fuck right now. Anyway. So, but it was all like this thing, like, oh, he looks like he's whatever, I don't know, in the mafia or anyway, it was all very, very, I was obviously a bad guy. And or at least that's what they thought. That's what it seemed to be. I fit the image, right? So and at this point I got where Dad was going with this, right? And so then after that, we both come in, and the kids are all kind of like, oh, what's going on? Like, why is that guy still here? And then Dad said, well, this is my son. He's a singer in a rock and roll band, and and then I talked to them about what I was doing, and blah 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 blah. And then we laugh, like, it was first impression. So don't judge somebody by their cover. Don't judge a book by its cover, kind of thing. But what ended up happening was a bunch of these kids afterwards felt really, really terrible. Like they were in tears, quite a few of them. So, like we were like, well, we won't do that again, right? But it was a powerful lesson, is what that means. It was a powerful lesson. And those kids that cried, well, blessed are they who are mournful, right? Blessed are they who mourn. Anyway, yeah, so that was that. He was told that he shouldn't do that lesson again. But that reminds me of why I'm off right now. Because I was teaching a grade 10 foods class with a group of very unruly grade 10s. Now, grade 10 is a difficult age. 15, 16. What was I in grade 10? I would have been 15. And I turned 16 in January. But yeah, so everyone's about 16, maybe 17. That window. And these students were, I've had trouble kids. You always do. You generally have either one, you're pretty much guaranteed one kid that's going to be a bit of a thorn in your ass, and that's okay. That comes with the territory, right? And generally, I take that one kid and aside, usually, and tell them that we're not going to play that game. Usually it's fairly effective. But in this particular case, it was an entire classroom. And that's another thing with that sort of classroom management thing. So if you have one kid that's a pain in your ass, that will maybe influence 2 to 3 other kids. So again, you really want to nip that in the bud right out of the gate. That's why supply teaching is so awful, because you have that same asshole now. They can play. But this was an entire classroom that thought they could play. And, I was trying to kind of, make my way around and work my way around this classroom. So what happened was, I've been off for 6 years, because the first 3 I had a migraine, and these last few have just been sort of, I don't know what the hell's going on, to be honest with you. Again, our education system, our government, everything is a disaster. And actually, my situation speaks to that, because really what we have here is an entire generation of kids that all they know is gaslighting. So let me kind of continue on. So I had these grade 10 foods, and actually I've never taught foods, but I was really enjoying it. I've worked in industry. I had a catering company with my ex-wife. I know my way around a kitchen. I have probably somewhere between 15 and 20 years experience. One of them is at the Army camp. I worked, I think, 8 seasons at the Army camp. That's why I got to know Dudley so well, because he was one of the natives that always worked there in some capacity. He usually drove the truck around and dropped stuff off at the different kitchens. Him and beef. But so anyway, these grade 10 foods kids were something else. They just were on their phones or doing their makeup. I mean, this one girl she just sat there and did her makeup for 20 minutes. Anyway, so, and like I said, I've been kind of through a lot these last few years, and I thought, well, maybe I'll take this time to just sort of have a bit of a heart-to-heart with these kids. So, well, firstly, though, I moved them into my other classroom. So I was teaching a split of, 11 and 12 manufacturing with foods. So basically, I don't know, but I assume that 3 or whatever, 4 or whatever teachers they went through were most likely overwhelmed. Because here's the other part of technology and education that nobody gets, is that it's not, you don't pick up a textbook and turn to page 302 in grade 12 manufacturing. There's no such thing. It's all tech teachers' personal abilities, skills, and knowledge. And unfortunately, there is a huge divide in that knowledge. Large gap. Let's call it like the Grand Canyon of good teachers and bad teachers. I'd like to consider myself a good teacher because I know a lot of stuff about a lot of different things. And basically everything I've ever done has a tech angle. As a musician, as a cook, as an artist, as a graphic artist, as a photographer, as a videographer, as a 3D artist, as a 3D CAD draw. Again, I have a diverse, broad-based knowledge of technology. But these kids assumed I had no idea what I was doing, and that they could just sort of railroad me into doing whatever they wanted to do, right? And again, that's not how this works. So, I thought, okay, well, firstly, let's go into my other classroom, and I'm going to give them a little breakdown. I was going to tell them what I'm saying to you right now. It's look, guys, you need to have a little bit of empathy and understand that not everybody that teaches you is good. Just just try to have a little empathy. Well, actually, firstly, I told them the difference between empathy and sympathy. So, and how I like to describe those two things is sympathy is I hear you, and empathy is I feel you, right? I feel your pain. And so, and I said, okay, so they had an assignment that they had to do, which they didn't want to listen to. It was a PowerPoint. And so none of them are, they're all on their phones, and it's just like, okay. So I shut it down. I was like, look, I want to tell you what I've been through. And so I told them my story, that I'd been in extraordinary pain, that I was, at one point suicidal. And when I said I was suicidal, a bunch of girls started to laugh. And I was like, wow. And actually, I heard some other kids say, like, what's so funny about that? And I was like, well, yeah, what is so funny about that? Like, you want to watch me? Would you want to watch? Like, shall I entertain you? Kind of a throwback to that old Gladiator thing. Like, are you not entertained? Right? But no, they just kept on laughing. And I was like, okay, well, whatever. And I continued my little speech about how, I'm doing great now. Life is great. Like, I'm not in pain all the time. But it was actually, interesting enough, it was the same day that CEO was shot. And that whole deny, defend, depose thing. And actually, that's the other part of that, is that I was explaining how I lived exactly that. Like, I was denied my claim because I wasn't completely disabled. And yet, a migraine is completely disabling because the only thing you can do is lay down. So, again, it doesn't really matter the argument. Like, this is where I was so disappointed with our own provincial lawyers, is because it's like they just completely accept whatever the insurance company says to be fact. It's the insurance company that interviewed me, not my lawyers. Like the system sucks. The system is a failure. It sure as hell failed me, right? And, like I said, I was in a bad place. I was in a dark place. Like, being in that much pain all the time is gonna drive you fucking crazy at some point. Thank God it didn't drive me fucking crazy. I'm going to go on the record on what kept me alive. My daughter, Annie, texted me every single day. She knew where my head was at. Like, I told everybody I was, it's just a level 2 today. It wasn't a level 2. It was a 5-6. And part of that was me just sort of convincing myself it was a 2. Because I used to do that with my migraines as a kid. I would imagine I had an ice pick in my temple, and I was slowly pulling that ice pick out, and I would sometimes feel release, the placebo effect. Anyway, so like I'm telling these kids my story, these girls laugh, and I'm like, okay, well, whatever, and I was like, look, you have to watch this PowerPoint, and there's going to be a questionnaire tomorrow. You're gonna have to fill out. And everyone's like, we just want to cook and have fun and get our phones and do whatever we want and get 100%. Because apparently that was the bar that was set before there. Like, they really didn't. They all got 100% last year for driving their teachers crazy. So they had an incentive to do that. And that reminds me of another story about a true narcissist and a psychopath that my father dealt with, and I dealt with sort of indirectly. When this guy was a kid, maybe 12 years old, 10 to 12, he thought it would be fun to be like, to just tell somebody at Ipperwash that he was swimming with his buddy and his buddy disappeared. He thought that would be he wanted to know what would happen with that. See, that's what narcissism is, right? It's trying to make everything about me. enough about me. Let's talk about me. But what about me? You know, how's your suicidal thoughts affect my life? You know, I don't care about your story. What about my story? I don't care about you. What about me? Right? Budding young psychopaths. Morally void. Anyway, so that's what he did. I'm not exactly sure how, but I think Dad was called in to talk to him, to interview him. And they called in Coast Guard, helicopter, everybody. Dive team, like the scuba team. That was a several $1 million day. Because a 10-year-old kid was a narcissistic little brat. That same narcissistic little brat killed an entire family I worked with at the army camp. I worked with the mother, who was one of the salad girls, older lady, and her son was a dishwasher. And the dad was stepdad, but he was a farmer. And I remember they used to just, grab up any kind of scraps of anything. They would just take the garbage home with them, which I thought was great. And they would feed that to their pigs. Because, the army camp wasted so much food, which bothered me. Like, I've always been fairly empathetic. So when I see starving children around the world and I see us throwing out one day, well, these guys got fired. This catering company got fired, but they threw out 4 full industrial sized bins of deep fried fish. There was probably 600 pounds of fish that they threw out. Like, that was, what the fuck are you thinking? Like, you just cooked the entire fish reserve for the summer in one go and threw it out. Anyways, so this kid, actually it was the boy that was working as the dishwasher. He was bragging about how, and I don't know, for all I know, it might have been at the army camp. But this kid got caught word of it, right? It was a rumor. And he was talking about how his stepdad had this awesome gun collection. Okay. So I don't want to mention this kid's name, but I'll call him SJ. SJ, who was the same guy that called out, said his best friend drowned. He knew this kid. Maybe he worked with them at the army camp. For all I know, he was at the army camp too, and I just didn't know him. But he caught word of this, and so he knew where he lived, the farm where they lived. So he drove out there and he kind of parked his car over, and he said he had car troubles. So he walked to the house, said he had car troubles, and the boy met him at the door. And he said, well, I kind of know some stuff about cars, so I'll go take a look at it. Like, SJ wasn't, expecting that, right? He was thinking, oh, well, just let me use your phone, or, he was just trying to get into the house. So he gets on he's got a dirt bike, this kid, because, of course he does. He's a farmer. All farm kids have dirt bikes. So he gets on his dirt bike and he's like, where are you parked? I'll go take a look. Because he's a good kid, right? A good, trying to help kind of kid. So he gets out there, and they park. And then, I think he was on the bike, and SJ just starts, like, stabbing him with a knife. So they kind of, wipe out. I guess he must have been coming close to a stop or whatever. And, then he collapsed. And he's still trying to fight to get back up, and he's still, he stabbed him multiple times. Finally did kill him. he got a shotgun from somewhere. He must have brought the shotgun with him. And so he goes back to the house and says, "Where's your gun collection?" This by the old man's out and about, and his mother had taken sleeping pills, so she was completely out. She was unconscious this whole time. So he walks into the house. Now, actually, he must have had, I don't know if he had someone with him, but someone else retold the story, and I'll get to that. But he walks into the house, and he's meted by the dad and the stepdad, and he says, "What do you want?" He's like, "Show me where your gun collection is." And the old boy says, "Well, that gun's not even loaded." And then he just kind of blows him away, just shoots him. Then he goes upstairs and executes the woman asleep. I guess he searched the house until he could find the guns, found them. And then he brought him back to his posse. And one of his posse shot himself in the foot. Now, this is where SJ, although he probably was a true psychopath, he wasn't smart enough to realize that he needed to finish his friend. That's what Kaiser Sose would have done. And he would have got away with it. But his friend went in, they just dumped him off at the hospital. He said he got shot, and they're like, "What do you mean you got shot? How'd you get shot?" And then, "We got to call the cops," and they're like, and he just started singing. Right. Because he didn't kill that family. SJ did. So again, I think Instagram and TikTok and the media and the state of the world, kids these days, all they know is gaslighting. They don't know what the truth is, and they have no appreciation for the truth. So, Mike, was it Mike Myers? Or no, not Mike Myers. Yeah, the documentary guy. Anyway, one of his documentaries was Where to Invade Next. And, you know what, I'm going to leave that for another story. But that, where I'm going with that is we can learn things from other places, especially in education. Education's in a mess, especially technical education, because no one has ever had a really good handle on it. Like, I call it the Wild West of education. And whoever's sheriff gets the toys. So, whoever's the department head buys what's fun for them. I don't know. Hopefully somebody buys a vowel or phones a friend.